Only one man knew the location of this buried treasure, but dead men tell no tales. What clues did Don Joaquin leave behind? And how far will I have to go in order to find his hidden stash of gold worth over $5 million? Join me, Joanna Skye, on my latest treasure hunting expedition on the next Lost Legends of the West. It was 1847. The gold rush was about to begin. After enslaving Indians from a local mission and with the help of some Mexicans, Don Joaquin began digging deep into the Sierra Estrellas. After mining for a number of years, word came that the American army was going to pass by. Don Joaquin then had a decision to make. To stay at the mine would certainly mean death. He spent a sleepless night contemplating the fate of his beloved mining operation. When day broke over the ridges of the mountains, the decision had been made to abandon the mine. Don Joaquin sent his workers to set up camp at a small butte near the base of the mountain range. Then, with the help of one Indian, he packed up his millions headed up a zigzag trail and buried the gold. After burying the gold, Don Joaquin struck the Indian dead with a club because, after all, dead men tell no tales. He marked the location on the map and then met up with the other miners later that night. No one knows exactly what happened that night, but what is known is that Don Joaquin was found dead in his blankets the next morning. After being laid to rest at the small butte, the miners were on their way back to Guadalajara, Mexico. No one knows what became of the old map, but what is known is that somewhere in the Sierra Estrellas lies a cave filled with millions of dollars.
So where does the lost treasure lie? Does it lie in one of the many box canyons scattered along the southeast end of the Estrellas? Or did some old miner find it already? Or does it not even exist? I'm Joanna Skye, and in the next half hour, we will attempt to pin as many details as possible leading up to the disappearance of the gold. In this show, we're going to talk to professors, gold hunters, and local Indians to see if we can find Don Joaquin's millions.
Every legend has some truth. Every truth has some legend. We find the truth in the legend.
sitting here at the library in Tucson, Arizona. This is where the journey always begins. You must first research anything before you make an attempt at it. My journey begins with the legend written by John D. Mitchell in his book, Lost Mines and Buried Treasure Along the Old Frontier. Mitchell tells us that the legend took place in Phoenix in 1847, before the Gadsden Purchase. Today, Phoenix is located in the middle of the state, but 150 years ago, it was a border town with Mexico. According to Mitchell, on the Rainbow Valley side of the Sierra Estrella Mountains, miners from Mexico, along with Indians from the local St. Catherine's Mission, made a trail up to Quartz Peak to begin mining the gold. They worked at this mine for the next several years. With word of the American Army coming, all of the miners, except for Don Joaquin and one Indian, left the mine and headed for the butte on the other side of the mountains. Don Joaquin had other plans. He and the Indian went up the trail and along the crest some distance before turning down a short trail and into a box canyon. Here, they buried the gold, and this is also where Don Joaquin killed the Indian. After seeing to it that only he knew the location of his gold, Don Joaquin soon joined the other miners at the butte. The miners, not being told where the gold is, got restless and took Don Joaquin's life. At the butte lies Don Joaquin, and with him, the location of the buried treasure. From Tucson, I took the I-10 to Casa Grande. This town is famous for two things: outlet malls and cops. From Casa Grande, I went to the sleepy little town of Maricopa. Maricopa only has one intersection, and I can honestly say everything happens around this lone intersection. There are a couple of factories and slaughterhouses in town where most of the local residents work. You wonder if they have any idea about the treasure that is within a few miles.
Standing outside of downtown Maricopa, and I think this is the butte behind me. This could be where Don Joaquin's buried. Let's go find out.
After driving around the entire butte and not having any luck, I decided to get out and try and find the grave on foot. Finding this grave is much harder than it looks. I doubt there is a tombstone or any sort of marker to the site, which makes this search even more difficult. But then I noticed a small mound of rocks. Could this be it?
This is definitely it. All the details of this grave match exactly to those described in Mitchell's book. And, as you can see, it looks like the cave's been dug up, which proves that we're not the first to be looking for this lost cave of gold.
The next piece of the puzzle I wanted to find was St. Catherine's Mission, where supposedly the Indian miners were from. This is one of Father Keno's famous missions. He was the first non-Native American to hike the Estrellas. Most of Father Keno's missions are big tourist attractions, but this one has no information on it. St. Catherine's Mission is believed to be on the Maricopa Indian Reservation. This, like many reservations, is very poor. These people have extreme pride in their land and their family. After driving on an old country road for more than 2 hours, we came upon a small church.
Could this be the mission? Let's go check it out. Everything seems to fit. But then we found over here this date, and it's 1947. So that throws my theory out the window.
So then I wondered, could it be the building next to it?
Could this building next to it be the Lost Mission? It seems older than the one next to it, and could have been a church at one time. You can tell because these long windows that are now actually covered up. So here I stand at what very well could be the footsteps of St. Catherine's Mission. Stay tuned, because after break we're going to head over to the Rainbow Valley side of the Estrellas and hopefully find that golden trail leading to the cave. And as you can see, the sun is setting, so right now it's time for me to go set. Wow, the Sierra Estrellas make it real easy to wake up in the morning. Not to mention, after having such a great night's sleep in the desert, if you've never done it before, I highly recommend it. If you're from the East Coast like I am, here's a little tip for you. Always remember to never set up camp in a wash like this. If it starts raining, forget it. This place turns into a river in just a matter of seconds.
As I broke camp, there was one thing on my mind: the Rainbow Valley side of the Estrellas, where supposedly the zigzag trail is. On the road there, we came across what appeared to be an old school or church. The reason I suspected it was a church was because of the outcropping, so I decided to go to the nearest town to inquire. Unfortunately, the nearest town only had one building with no one in it. Oh well, this mystery will have to go unsolved for now. On my way to the trail, we stopped at a local airfield at the footsteps of the Estrellas to get a bird's eye view of the terrain which I was about to hike. This was my first time in a single-engine plane, and I have to admit, I was a little scared, but I was just way too excited, and before I knew it, we were taking off. From the air, the Estrellas are a rugged and desolate mountain range. Our pilot Bruce, who owns Estrella Sailport, is very experienced. He has been flying since the age of 19. As I looked over the mountains, I remembered a professor telling me that this range is volcanic. You can see the hollowed volcanic shell. I then saw the mighty Quartz Peak, which is supposedly the end of the zigzag trail. Now I understand the root of Albert Einstein's genius when he said, "Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better." From the air, I went to the base of the canyon and began hiking the trail where I believe the rock house and old mine shaft are hidden. An old Maricopa resident who wished to remain anonymous told me that his ancestors were enslaved and were forced to build the house and mine. Along the way, we found several old Indian markings engraved on the side of a boulder.
I just wanted to point out a second that this is a box canyon right here behind me. You can tell because it's 3 sides and just one opening. The term comes from when cowboys used to box their cattle right into the canyon. Watch out for this cactus right here. Oh my goodness, there it is. Come on. It's a lot smaller than I expected, but I guess there's only one person living there, huh? This is amazing. You have to come see this. Look, you can see how the rocks are stacked one on top of another, which is dirt, nothing else. And the house is pretty much livable with the exception of the roof. Whoever built this spent a lot of time on it for it to still be standing now. Oh, look, there's something over here. I don't know what. Maybe it tells us where the gold is. I don't know. It's people that have been here. There's dates and everything. Let me see. Jim, Jason, Dad, after looking for this mine, after 17 years, have found it. Have been in the entire length of the Estrellas. Found a lot of very old Spanish history. Have fun. It's awesome. What else? My dad just came here in the 1930s. I was last here in 1961. I'm glad the old rock house is still standing. John. What's this one? Third time here, house still standing, as good as new. Trail hard to find, but fun to take. 97. Back again. Found mine 100 yards up canyon on left. Time to go find the mine shaft.
With the rock house at my back, I went in search of the mine.
Could this be it? I think I found it. Yep, I think it's the old mine shaft. Yep, here it is. It's definitely it. Oh, I wonder how deep it is. Chopper.
This too is very old and uses the same construction as the house. Notice the pickaxe marks on the side? This entire mine was built without any dynamite at all. This puts it in the same time frame as our legend. I decided to drop a camera down the mine shaft just to see if there was anything left behind. After the 100-foot drop, the camera revealed some of the most enchanting pictures I've ever seen. After unfortunately losing my camera down the mine shaft, it was back to the Rainbow Valley in search of the zigzag trail. The Rainbow Valley is true wilderness. I mean nothing. The only thing that exists is one dirt road for access to the power lines, and the power lines are definitely the most prominent feature here. I noticed a sign that said trail, so I followed the road and ended up at the base of the mighty Estrellas. Here I found a huge mining operation from the 1890s or before, right below Quartz Peak. Then I hit the jackpot and found the zigzag trail leading up to Quartz Peak. A later inquiry to the Bureau of Land Management office let me know that this trail had been discovered accidentally on a nature hike in the 1970s. Here, as I was going up the trail, I became more and more convinced that this was in fact the old miner trail. With the grades not being steep and many switchbacks, this would have been perfect for mules.
As you can see, in most places the trail was cut out of the rock, which leads me to believe this was done by miners.
Then the hike up the peak was almost impossible, and to continue along the crest would be even harder, impossible with donkeys.
This is one of the toughest trails I've ever hiked.
Back at the summit, I was truly baffled when it hit me. Could the map have been misread? Could what was thought to be the range really be one canyon? Lo and behold, around dusk, thousands of bats emerged from the northwest side. Sure enough, it made a box canyon. It all works. We did not exactly see where the bats came from, but to trudge through the canyon with the cameras would be almost impossible, in addition to the fact that we are out of time.
So now I leave it up to you. I found the butte, the grave, the mission, the rock house, and the mine. All you need to do is find the gold. But remember, many men have spent lifetimes just seconds away from being rich. So in the words of the famous American poet Henry Van Dyke, the goal of his journey may be won. He may rest, but he is never idle. 1,000 years may pass like a day in glad surprise of paradise where work may be sweeter than play. Until next time, I'm Joanna Skye, and this has been Lost Legends of the West.